They say to understand the future, you have to stand where you can see it coming. Experts suggest that climate change has a greater potential to transform our planet than almost anything else in human history.
But what is it really? It's not just a hot day or a rainy week. Climate change is statistically a significant change in the weather pattern over a continuous long-term period. It's the slow, steady heartbeat of the Earth changing pace. But before we go further, it's important to address some of the most common misconceptions about climate change, because these ideas can make it really hard to understand about what's really happening.
A common claim is the climate has changed before, so this is natural. It's true that the climate has changed over its 4.5 billion years history, but what's different now is the rate of change. For the past 10,000 years, the climate has been relatively stable, allowing human civilization to develop. Today, that the stability has been disrupted and the current warming cannot be explained by the natural cycles alone.
Another misconception, it is said that climate change happens over hundreds or thousands of years, while some even say it's a quick shift in weather patterns. But climate is measured over long periods, typically 30 years or more. But the warming that we are experiencing today is happening much faster than expected. In fact, the Earth is heating at its fastest rate in at least the last 2,000 years.
You might also hear that the sun causes temperature rise. While the sun does influence Earth's climate, scientific data shows that solar activity has remained stable or even slightly decreased over the past few decades, while the global temperature continued to rise. This tells us that the main driver is something else.
And that something else is human activity. Still, some say that scientists are still debating over the cause. But in reality, there's an overwhelming agreement about this issue. In fact, 97% of climate scientists concluded that human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels, are the primary cause of global warming.
Another common misunderstanding. It's cold today, so the global warming isn't real. This mixes up weather and climate. Weather is a short-term and local, while climate is a long-term global trend. A single cold day doesn't change the fact that the recent decades have been the warmest on record.
There's also a belief that climate change is only about temperature, but it involves more than that. Shifting rainfall patterns, stronger storms, rising sea levels, and impacts on food and water systems. And finally, reducing carbon emissions will harm the economy. In reality, transitioning to renewable energy is becoming an economic opportunity. In many places, sources like wind and solar are now more affordable than fossil fuels.
When we look at the full scientific evidence, the message is clear. Climate change is real, it is happening rapidly, and human activities is the primary driver.
Understanding this means looking at the balance of the Earth. Factors like natural internal processes and external forces, both play their parts.
Looking at this peaceful landscape, it's easy to forget that the Earth itself is a massive contributor to climate change. Somewhere across the globe, massive volcanic eruptions are releasing sulfur oxide into the atmosphere. While we usually think of volcanoes as heat, these particles actually blocks the solar radiation, creating a cooling effect into the lithosphere that can last for years.
And if we look even higher, the Milankovitch theory explains the Earth orbits, its eccentricity, obliquity, and precision alters the solar energy we receive. These are the natural processes occurring over thousands of years.
But today, those rhythms are being overtaken
The carbon dioxide theory shows that CO2 acts like a blanket. It's transparent to the sun's light, but traps the infrared heat trying to escape back into space. By doubling CO2 through human activity, we are raising the global temperature by 2 degrees Celsius to 3 degrees Celsius.
This isn't just a number on a graph. It affects the basic elements of life: water, food, and health. Declining crop yields due to drought are causing hundreds of millions of lives at risk, particularly in regions like Africa.
In our oceans, rising carbon levels lead to acidification, threatening fish stocks and marine life.
And as the heat rises, so does the diseases. Malaria and dengue fever will become more widespread if we don't implement effective control measures now.
So, where do we go from here? The answer is mitigation.
It starts with changing how we power our world, move away from burning fossil fuels in our transportation and industry.
We have to manage the halocarbons in our industrial processes, chemicals that deplete the ozone and trap heat.
We must protect our natural defenses. Deforestation releases carbon dioxide, but by preserving our forests, we maintain our planet's ability to breathe. Climate change is a human challenge, but it requires a scientific response. We only call it change once the data shows persistent shift over years. But now, that shift is undeniable.